Start the podcast.
Okay. Hello, Internet. I'm Firebolt.
And I am the Orbiter.
You're always in a sing-song mood.
No, I'm not.
You usually are.
No, I'm not.
Fuck off.
Why?
Because you're annoying.
Got brandy in my coffee.
Is that a good idea?
I don't know. Good ideas are boring anyway.
Cool. Let's get on with the thing, unless you have anything to say.
I hope I've got something to say. We've got a lot of time to fill if I don't.
Well, unless you got something to say that's not to do with our episode.
I did.
Oh, yeah, by the way, it's episode 32 now?
I did actually have
Is this
some...
episode 32?
No, 31.
No,
it's 32.
Yeah,
Yeah, 32. Yeah, 'cause
we lied on
slid an
violence.
extra one in, didn't we?
I think we said that was episode 30, but podcast is now episode 30, which went out like a month ago.
I did have some follow up, but I can't remember what it was now.
You're so useful.
I know.
Oh yeah, announcement.
What is?
We have a new podcast. Well, he does.
Oh yeah, I got a new one.
Just picked up on my way home.
Yes.
Basically, well, I'll let you explain.
Yeah, I'm doing a new podcast thing.
You have your smoke.
No, I'm in a weird mood tonight. Called
Aren't you?
Better Call Paul, a Musician's Diary.
Tish. Because his name's Paul, and we're Breaking Bad, and it's like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. And he's Paul. That's Better Call Paul. And we're Breaking Bad.
Please be quiet.
It's a funny pun.
Nah. Yeah, basically I'm just keeping a bit of a verbal blog going on, just random thoughts from my head as I go from place to place, and just
Playing music.
I'm not sure it should be out actually, because we record things weeks ahead, as our loyal, regular, long time sufferers will know. So we're actually, what date is it now? Where are we now?
13th. Pre-Brexit.
Yeah, by the time you lot get to hear this, we could be
Dead.
an independent nation.
Or dead.
Sorry, I don't know why I found that funny. So yeah, it's probably propagated to all the podcast platforms now. Look for it. Better Call Paul, a Musician's Diary. I don't know if it's going to keep going or what it's going to keep going as, but I'm enjoying it so far. I'm basically just getting to... Do you know what I thought, actually? What I realised the other day, why I'm enjoying doing it, is because... for a change, it's like having a chat with someone. Like I quite often do a bit of a talk in the car on the way to gigs, and it's like having a chat with somebody, but you actually get a chance to get a word in. Did you hear the little snort from Star Stuff there?
I did.
Of derision.
Yeah, well... maybe with how much stupid shit you come out with is... It's good to sometimes have someone to help you along the way form your ideas.
No, that's not true.
Finish your sentences.
Yeah, like I've noticed whilst editing, you'll just go.
What is this? What is this? Pole bashing day?
Yay!
Yeah.
I can make a card for that.
Don't you bonk me.
Sorry.
This is going to be a random episode, isn't it? I was thinking actually.
Probably get onto the subject.
Well, just hold your horses for a moment.
Proverbial horses.
I was thinking it'd probably be worthwhile having a fair bit of digressing today, because I don't know whether we could keep a conversation going for an hour on the subject or more.
I definitely could.
Could you? Yeah, but would you just not be repeating the same stuff or arguing with me about stuff?
Well, I might argue with you about some stuff, but
okay.
It's good to have some debate for once. We usually agree on shit.
Yeah, I suppose, but let's not get too heavy. Let's talk
Okay.
seriously about it, but let's have fun too.
Sure.
Off you go then.
Okay, so our subject for today.
Gender.
I was doing a drum roll.
I know, but I was interrupting it and ruining the suspense.
You're a piece of shit.
I know. It's what I live for.
Being a piece of shit.
Yes.
Eating it.
Where did that come from? Well, I mean, I know where it came from, but
Star-stuff's brain. Where does anything come from in Star-stuff's brain?
sorry, I was just thinking one girl. Never mind. Go, move on
What?
quickly. I'm being stared at. Move on now before it's too late.
Wait, what's this about? I don't want to move on because
I don't think you want to linger
It's usually
either,
two
darling.
girls, let's just say.
Oh,
But carry
right,
on
that.
now.
Yep.
Come on, because we're
Man, I've been
going to lose
for life
audience.
full
They're going to
of-
think we don't actually talk about anything in particular, or just because we haven't actually said anything yet. Really.
But yeah, we said shit. Well, this is us. This is us being us.
Are you speaking English?
No, this is us being us. We ramble. Fine. Anyway,
I've been on
so
a ramble before.
shut up.
No, there's a rambling society. Do you know what
You're
rambling
the
is?
president.
Do you know what rambling is?
What?
It's basically walking around the countryside.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anyway,
Carry on.
there's quite a few things that come under the umbrella of gender.
Oh yeah, I forgot we'd announced the subject.
Yeah. So, what do you want to start with?
I probably
I mean, we're
That
gonna
annoys
have
me.
we're gonna have an
yeah, you can't ask me what I want to start
Okay,
with
hang
and then interrupt me when I try to answer.
Okay, hang on. We're gonna have an episode on sexism anyway at some point. I think somewhere in the 40s. I don't know. But
1940s.
no, like in episodes 40s.
2040s. Jesus, your database has got far in advance now.
No, like episodes of
Okay.
episode 40.
I know what you
episode
mean. I'm
49.
just being a dick.
I can tell. Though I already know what episode 49 is, so it won't be that.
Yes, so in response to your question, it annoys me. I will just to get the conversation going, it goes. I will say...
There we go. Thank you for coughing for a sound test.
Oh.
And opportune sneezes there.
Where were we? Yeah, why is it male and female and not masculine and feminine? Because that's more accurate in terms of what it actually denotes. To me.
Right.
To me, it seems to be. I mean, from an engineering standpoint, it's a bit confusing because the gender...
I didn't actually hear you actually finish your sentence, I don't think.
All right, okay, I'll start again. Yeah, I kind of find it frustratingly annoying that the same words are used in our language to denote biological sex and gender, because male and female, while they refer to the shape of your body, basically, and your biological makeup, gender is more, to me, is more about masculine and feminine rather than male and female, because male and female in engineering is a reference to like basically a plug or a socket, so it's a physical label.
Yeah.
Whereas gender is more of a, I mean, I think I said before it's a social construct, but to me it kind of is, because it's about role defining, really, isn't it, rather than...
Yeah, which is bullshit. Just straight up bullshit, I think.
But this is why I was thinking, could we really find an hour to talk about it, because we kind of agree on that. That's kind of...
There's plenty to talk about.
Okay. You've got glitter on your lip. I was going to wear a dress for this episode, actually. But that's not gender, is it? Well, no. There's a lot of different issues tied up in...
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, but it's not about sexuality, although that may be connected.
There's a lot of issues under this as well.
You're getting annoyed.
No, you just...
Calm down, dear.
I find it annoying that you just automatically assume that there's not really a lot to talk about in something. It's just like... And I'm just there going... I have a fucking like bullet point list in my mind of everything we can talk about here. And
yeah, but you asked me
long.
to start and you haven't given your first bullet point yet, so bring it.
Okay, let's talk
Bring it, dude.
about Ben Shapiro.
Who is Ben Shapiro?
Cock. He's basically, as far as I can tell, the American Piers Morgan.
Right, okay. And what relevance does he have to the subject we're talking about?
Well, he has quite a reputation for baiting trans people. And
Oh, yeah, I think I've heard about this guy. Yeah.
He's just a annoying, just... Yeah.
Yeah, but for me, the most effective way of treating people like that is to just ignore their existence.
Yeah, but when there's an important debate to be had here about when to ignore trolls and when to actually rise to a debate, which comes into freedom of speech, which is the very first episode.
I remember something about this. Who was it he was talking about?
Maybe Milo Yiannopoulos.
Who?
I think he's an Australian vlogger or something, or blogger, that was supporting a bunch of really far right thing, and university was planning to let him speak, and then students demonstrated against it, and he couldn't speak there anymore. He was deplatformed, as they call it.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of people went, oh, the left is fucking crybabies or whatever.
Yeah, I think the problem is that often, though, that people who have more extreme views about things tend to be more vocal. I think my sort of point about it would be that, it's important to contest things that are said by people that are being unreasonable about things, but I think the majority of people wouldn't agree with this Ben Shapiro.
You would be surprised, because not a lot of people actually see trans or non-binary people represented in anything, really.
Well, it depends.
At least
they're
accurately.
represented.
At least accurately. Like, if a transvestite doesn't really count, because that's really distorted.
But there's a lot of people, I think the general kind of... I suppose it's maybe because of the circles that I move in, but most of the people I know and mix with, there are exceptions, but most of them are pretty liberal-minded and would be along the lines of... I mean, like, for instance, I know Star Stuff's my wife, Mum, has often said in the past about the whole issue of not neutral gender, what do you call it?
Non-binary.
Talking about toilets. Having male and female.
So my mum said about it.
No, you. About what's the point of having separate male and female toilets, because you don't have them at home. So it's like, and I know people get all up in arms about like sort of, oh yeah, but my daughter's not going to be safe in this toilet if blokes are going to be allowed in there. It's like, but that's nothing to do with them being blokes. It's to do with them being dickheads.
Yeah, and there's nothing across the toilet door to stop somebody of a different gender coming in. Anyone can walk into it.
And
it's not like a magical.
And the other thing is as well,
if they're planning on raping somebody, they're not going to really care about.
I know from experience, because my mum, your nan, worked in a single-sex school for quite a long time, for quite a few years. You know, the kind of assaults that they can be subjected to in the toilets in an all-girls school are pretty horrific. You know, I mean, when you see two girls fighting, it's at least as violent. You start with the hair pulling and the eye scratching and stuff like that. It's kind of... So I don't think they're any more at risk because you're mixing the genders in the toilets. I don't think it's an issue. But I think some people just make it an issue because...
Yeah, it's sort of...
They're just non-accepting, really.
It's sort of a thing about... people making issues about someone else just feeling included.
Yeah, I mean, if
which is it's just a sort of basic thing of why would you be angry about that? Yeah, it's a sort of like, well, what's
that-
really the point of that. But
that
to
to
them,
me-
it does matter.
That to me
So why are
bypasses
you
the
angry
issue, because
about
it's
it?
like, well, why separate people in that? I mean, because if you look back to apartheid in South Africa, they used to have 4 sets of toilets. I don't know whether there were 4, but there were certainly different ones for the blacks and the whites. And it's like, well, that's kind of been proved to be ridiculous. So just,
There are more biological differences between different sexes, though, than different races. Or as we've defined them, races, because race is kind of just a bullshit term based on...
Everybody still
Wait,
poos and wheeze, though.
yeah.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. And it still smells just as bad, trust me.
Yeah.
But I would say that there's no biological reason that the rate of rape of women is higher than that of men. There's no biological reason. I think that's society, again, just kind of having these weird preconceptions and not actually teaching people to be decent, because I think we just assume that people are fine.
Well, I mean, there is a kind of...
figuring out themselves.
There is a hidden kind of force in that assumption that it's more male on female assault that happens, and that is that if you grow up in a society that's constantly telling you that, then as a male, you're gonna subconsciously feel like you're a member of the more aggressive part of society who's generally more,
I suppose,
likely to do it.
Kind of, yeah, that kind of makes sense.
And I think it exacerbates things in both directions, because if you're also on the other side of it, if you're a female who is particularly, well, I say particularly, but quite rightly against the idea of sexual assault, and you expect it to come from the male side all the time, then you're more likely to be aggressively defensive about it. So it's just like everything else. It's just about division, and it's like why is it even a thing? Why is it that I think this is the thing that maybe you and me disagree on, is that because you seem to have a need to define gender and sexuality more than I do. I mean I would.
It's more about
sexuality
how it
podcast,
actually
isn't it?
performs within society.
Yeah.
Because really, there's physically nothing stopping you from wearing a dress.
And I have done at parties.
Yeah, but it's taken as a joke. And the thing is that for people who were born male, for some of them it's just how they want to actually dress, and how they want to live. But
I think I told you a little while ago, didn't I, about
it's sort of
about being in town and seeing someone who I thought was really good looking and like, oh, they're all right, and then realising that it was actually a bloke that was just really well presented, and I don't see why people should. I don't see why women should get all the best clothes. It's like,
yeah, I would say that
they've got so much more to choose from.
that's
looks
one
nice.
area that men kind of have it worse off in terms of actually being allowed to express themselves without being called a faggot or...
Well, there's that traditional kind of assumption that if you're the kind of guy that goes to the gym a lot, then it's likely that you're gay, or that's where gays hang out. It's like, because they have a level of self-respect that we're taught as males not to really have in terms of self-image.
I always saw that as more of a straight thing.
No, well, I don't think it's true, but there is this kind of, the kind of, I think a lot of it is to do with the sort of grooming thing. It's not deemed masculine to look after your image. Do you know what I mean? To be well groomed and to care about what you look like.
Yeah, but athletes are idolized as the sort of masculine role models.
Yeah, but that's always been a massive contradiction in society in terms of musicians as well, because you know, well, at least when I was at school, you got the piss taken out of you if you were a musician, but they were some of the coolest, most idolized people in adult society. You know?
Yeah, but they're idolized in child society, I guess,
and adult society.
Yeah. So,
but they don't make that
generally-
connection. Do you know what I mean?
like, there's still loads of homophobia in football, even though it's the most watched sport.
Well,
but
I mean, the number of people that, you know, a lot of people really looked up to and idolized Freddie Mercury, but it's almost like doublethink, because a lot of the people that did that would quite openly take the piss out of gays. So it's kind of, at the time in the 70s and the 80s.
yeah.
But it's just like, it just doesn't make sense. It's like, why? They'd just be people.
I think gender's a bit like Brexit. Nobody has a clue what's going on.
I think you can. It's just,
You can what?
well, you know, why do you give yourself the label of being straight? That's a good example of how much
I actually don't, but I was going to mention that earlier. But then I thought we've got a podcast on sexuality coming up. Have we at some point? Or is it sexism, you said?
Sexism.
Okay, so I can talk about this.
I think we have
actually.
one on sex. Like,
It's difficult. There are overlapping parts, aren't there, to this? So I suppose it's fine for me to. I don't actually label myself as straight.
Gender ties into sex quite a bit.
I don't label myself as straight. I recognise that, and I'm actually have at times been quite disappointed by the fact that I do prefer just, you know, I don't have a sexual attraction to other males at this moment, but I don't like deny the possibility that I might have in future. And I'll admit that when I was a child in the experimentation stages, I did have an experience with another boy when I was about 9 or 10, I think. And, you know, it's like, funnily enough, that same guy, got in touch with him on Facebook when the internet came about, like probably a good 20 years after I'd last seen him, and he's actually now a fundamentalist Christian in America and thinks and says that gays go to hell, and that. So I quickly unfriended him as soon as I realised that was. But so I wouldn't say that I'm 100% hetero. I just recognise that my attraction has been towards women primarily, and. You know, I don't use that as an excuse to define that's what I am and limit my options, if you like. Although I'm married, so obviously I would.
Yeah, but the idea of, okay, here's another example of the sort of how non-binary would be something different, I guess. Atheism. If there were no religious bullshit, which, as far as we're concerned, is societal structures, then that would be the default. But you have to say that you're an atheist.
I think that's changing. Yeah.
People assume that you just sort
this
of
is why I probably prefer the term humanist,
worldwide.
because atheist implies that there's...
Well, atheist is the default, and humanism builds on top of that to have something bigger to organise around.
Well, no, atheist implies that there's something to be against, if you like.
Yeah, but
it's like asexuality. It's like it.
Yeah.
The term asexuality refers to the fact that there is such a thing as sexuality. Because otherwise, why put an A in front of that word? Do you know what I mean?
But it's because most people in the world do believe in some sort of deity.
I suppose, in a way, what I'm saying is, by calling yourself an atheist, you're more referring to your philosophy in terms of how it relates to theism, rather than a positive thing of, actually, it's about humans and it's got nothing to do with any supernatural kind of...
Yeah, it's basically
denial.
saying, I don't want to identify with either, and making a big statement about that, and just saying, well, I'll just do whatever then, I think.
But, I mean, you saying, why do I identify as straight? What are the options? I choose not to identify.
Yeah, but people don't know that.
Why do they need to? That's my kind of...
I suppose, but
It's got nothing to do with them. It's my business who I fancy.
Gender does affect your everyday life, and people do need to know that.
Only for their benefit, because if they're going to come on to me because they think I'm gay or straight or whatever, I mean, remember I came at that time
with
the dwarf.
gender.
Yeah, but we're talking about definition, aren't we? What difference does it make to other people about my gender, apart from things like which toilet I use?
That's quite significant.
Yeah,
I suppose what me and Dad probably both have a similar view on this is that our viewpoint is what society ideally should be.
yeah,
Yeah.
What your gender is shouldn't matter.
Ideally,
to
it
anybody else.
shouldn't, but it does.
It does,
Ideally,
but to
religion
us-
shouldn't even exist,
Yeah,
in our opinion.
to
So
us,
atheism shouldn't
gender
really
doesn't
be
matter.
a word that exists.
Yeah.
But it needs to in our current society
suppose-
to denote something different.
Yeah.
So what you're talking about then is
I'm just trying to clarify because
Yeah.
I know sometimes you get crossfire.
It's just sort of
I would posit then that
disconnected from that.
what you're talking about is an unfortunately necessary reaction to the way society is set up. Even though it shouldn't be.
We have to do that in a lot of ways with how we identify.
It's the same with not a lot of women feel like they have to promote things for women. They shouldn't have to. It shouldn't be like that, but it is.
But what I would point out in recognition of that though is that does it not also make sense then that if you are recognizing society's unfair system and presenting yourself in a way that challenges that system, then that very system is affecting the way you present yourself and identify.
Yeah, but
it's having the unfair way society views you is having an effect on the way you view and present yourself.
Yeah, well, because it obviously will, because you live in that society.
Yeah. So is it not then by taking part in that you're validating that situation? To me, I suppose my neutral stance is more about just
by not rejecting it actively and just sort of having anyone assume that you just identify as male, which I'm assuming you do because I have assumed up to this point that you do. Because I call you Dad and people call you he, and I've never seen you wear a dress that wasn't for a joke or other feminine things.
Yeah.
I mean, you're camp, but that's a different issue. I mean, it's confusing because it's sort of an abstract thing about your identity, gender, and I think it is something that you should be proud of.
I
Only if you deserve to be.
what society sees me as being male. Do you mean?
No, not what society sees you as, but what you
What I identify as? I've never been proud of being male. I've actually always, pretty much all of my life, I've accepted what I am physically and how that fits into life. But I do remember for quite a lot of my childhood wishing that I'd been a girl because I just identified with them a lot more. I've always, and I still am, a lot more comfortable around females because I don't know why it is. I have assumed at times, I've thought it through that, obviously at the age of 7, my parents split up. So I was primarily living with my mother, and spent a lot of time around a lot of girls because I was, she was teaching in a girls' school and I was a musician, which was strangely enough, a lot of girls did music. So I don't know, I've always been a lot more comfortable around girls, but I don't feel the need to. I suppose there's a difference, isn't there, between what you identify as and what you physically are, because there's a journey, isn't there, for people who might begin to feel like they're something that they're physically not. They can go as far as having alterations, surgery to make that change. I've not felt that I needed to do that, but only because I think society has become more accepting of feminine traits in male people than it used to be. If I had to be a macho bloke now, I would be far more, and perhaps that's why I feel more comfortable being a bloke now, because I can be feminine as a bloke.
But with trans people, there is a physical need there as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was watching a TED talk from a trans man saying that before they transitioned, every day they looked in a mirror and thought, why do I have these things on my chest? Like, I don't want them.
Yeah, I don't like having a male body particularly. It's not.
Or that they didn't want to have to shave every day because that just reminded them.
But that's more because
that they weren't physically what they were inside.
Yeah.
And similarly with trans women saying that, I mean, the YouTuber that I'm about to play something from, I saw one of their videos and they said that they couldn't sleep unless they felt like they had something on their chest.
Right.
So it transcends that sort of way that you act.
See, my initial reaction to that would possibly be that, and I wouldn't want this to come across condescending in any way, but I feel like some of that is about what they've mentally built up inside themselves, because just because you're female doesn't mean you've got tits.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah. It's like, and in actual fact, I don't like big boobs. I'm one of those blokes that, and I've had friends that have said, if you don't like big boobs, you're gay. It's like, well, I'm not gay or a paedophile, and I'm not that either. I just don't like big boobs. I'm more into smaller ones, or even maybe not flat, but just they say more than a handful is a waste.
Okay,
but it's like, my point is,
would you have a crisis of self if you woke up tomorrow with tits?
They're bigger than mine anyway.
But what if that person woke up as a female the next day and still didn't have tits? Would they still feel like they should have? Would they need to go and get implants? Would they be the kind of person that would have plastic surgery to have boobs implanted because they felt like they should have boobs if they've been born female?
They've been born female.
Yeah, and they had small tits. Would they?
I don't think so.
So I think that's my point. It's not to me. It's not as much about the physical side as because you don't get to choose what your body type is. I mean, you might have this ideal in your head. The
reason why that's not an issue for you is because, and whilst you might say, well, I don't identify with this, it's just that your physical needs, psychologically matching your physical needs, sort of your gender, which is a psychological thing, matches your sex, which is a biological thing.
Yeah, this is where when we're talking about this is where you get frustrated, and I struggle to try and stem that frustration because I don't actually understand what.
Because you've never experienced it.
No, but I don't understand even the concept, because it's not like I don't see myself as specifically male. I just see myself as a human being. I happen to have those parts, but it's not. I don't conform to a role that society is.
So you might be agendered then. There is a word for that.
What's the necessity for giving it a label?
What's the necessity for giving atheism a label?
I don't think there is.
Well, then people are just going to assume, oh, well, he's a male and must believe in God. Because
no, but this is what I mean about coming at it from a positive point of view. I prefer to think of myself as a humanist rather than reacting to something in a negative way. To me, I'm a human being. And that's a positive decision.
Do have a psychological connection to their biology. They identify with their body. And some people feel ashamed of their body because their psychology doesn't really match up to that.
Well, I don't know whether or not that's a physical phenomenon within the brain, but I would, if it's not, then I would encourage them to try and think more freely about things and not tie themselves down, because it's kind of, you're making a prison for yourself if you attach labels to yourself that you don't need to.
Most people, you are quite a rare case here, feel some sort of psychological connection to that. If they did,
I'm a rare case.
If they did wake up the next day and their biology didn't match the gender that they'd had their whole life, then
That's a pretty
other than the
swift
thing of
transition.
just sort of
We're talking Kafka here.
shit. That's what they would have a bit of a breakdown, maybe.
Well, yeah, I probably would too, but that not because I would be against the idea of being female, just because it was a sudden overnight change, and I think I was going nuts. It's like I don't have a problem with the identity of femininity or being female in any way, but if it happened overnight, it would be a bit of a fucking shock.
Quite a lot
It's like-
of blokes sort of being implied as being female feel quite, I don't know if you'd say disgusted, but they definitely sort of push away from that, and I
Yeah.
don't think that's just because of societal pressures.
Well, that's their problem.
Yeah, but it's a lot of people's problem, and that's the thing that some people say, oh, well, that's their problem, and then are just like, well, yeah,
I
but
suppose
there's
the
still
difficulty
this
comes
thing.
about when they're in part, where they're a part of your family, because we choose our friends. You know, if somebody's like that with you, you can just decide not to be around them if you've got the option. But quite often, people, I suppose, are in situations where their family rejects them for.
Do you mean sort of being sexist towards themselves, really?
I mean, as an example, I'm not going to name any names, but there is somebody who I know who is gay, and somebody else who I'm around them at the same time, and they quite often really take the piss out of this person for being gay. Now, that could go either way. For me, it's felt quite borderline at times whether or not it's actually bullying, or
Yeah.
if it's just kind of amicable teasing, if you like. And I think the other people who've been around, just as myself, have possibly helped direct this situation by making it clear that we're not comfortable with the bullying aspect of it.
Yeah.
And that person's behaviour has been modified as a result. And they've whether or not they actually thought this way, or they've modified their beliefs as a result of the way they've been treated, they have made it more clear that it is just teasing, and it is amicable, and it's not meant offensively.
Right.
And if this person who was on the receiving end had been, more, I mean, they're quite a tough character, this person. So, they're kind of, they can take it. But, if they'd been uncomfortable about it in any way, or if they'd been, it could have been worse. But I suppose what I'm trying to say is you've got to kind of fight your own corner. But when you're outnumbered, that's the difficulty, isn't it? If you're in a workplace, let's say a macho kind of workplace, if you're in a factory that has a lot of very macho blokes, and
which quite a lot of people probably are.
Yeah. But
I mean, you're a musician, and like half of them are gay anyway, but
it's not going to happen.
But
I'm actually outnumbered. I mean, you said, why do I identify as straight? Probably one of the reasons I don't identify as straight is because if I did, I'd be in the minority in most of my workplaces. So it's kind of, especially in musical theatre.
Gay people are great.
People are great.
So some people.
Yeah, people are knobs as well, but
I don't know. I feel like maybe it's a sort of thing of having to work harder to sort of find a group that they fit in with.
I completely agree with you about the fact that society is unaccepting in way too many ways about lots of different things, gender being one of them. For me, my way of combating that is to deny the validity of those views rather than to fight against them. Because my problem is, like with the atheism thing, Richard Dawkins has a place.
In terms of ideology, that's fine. But in terms of practicality, on a day-to-day basis, it really means something else. It means apathy on a day-to-day basis.
No, it doesn't. Not for me. I mean, if I see somebody treating somebody else unfairly because of their gender, I won't let it lie. But I won't. I suppose I'll try to approach it in as diplomatic a way as possible, but I would make it clear that I did not agree with the way they were treating that person. But I would do it in a I'd try to do it in a non-confrontational way, because the problem, I think, when you come out sort of stridently against someone is that you often push them further in the direction that they are already too far in. They become more polarized. You know what I mean? Because they feel under attack, they're going to get more defensive and
yeah.
I think you need to give people an opportunity to retreat from their strident viewpoint without losing. Well, not without losing face necessarily, but do you know what I mean? Without feeling threatened.
Yeah.
Like they've got a safe place to come to. I mean, if you think a macho bloke is actually really insecure, they need the security blanket of thinking, oh yeah, I'm a bloke, you know. And if they're confronted with a situation where they might have to, in all reasonable behaviour, become more emotionally receptive, show their feminine side, become more understanding and emotionally kind of...
which is why a lot
they're not
of
going to be comfortable with that. Because
straight blokes just go, oh, musicals are just gay.
Yeah.
Or watching classical performances, sort of things that are meant to be expressive arts.
I think it's probably...
Quite a few people, instead of actually facing the fact that they have emotions that they've just built up over the years,
it's got a long
they don't
way to
really
go.
want to deal with.
It's like a lot of issues. It's got a long way to go, and I think it's a similar thing. Like with the, I know earlier on you were getting quite really, really deeply worried about the Brexit situation, and you're quite right to be worried about it. But I think like that and this, it's because actually no, that's not a very good analogy because that's not actually true in that case. Forget I said Brexit. But in terms of sexuality and gender and general liberal mindedness of society, in general, it's going in the right direction. Having seen for the last sort of 40 years, I've seen it heading in the right direction. But it could do with going a lot quicker.
But yeah,
musicals are ace. I love musicals.
But for those people in pain, like a year of things sort of just slowly going in the right direction is really painful. Because if they're not there yet, then they're still a lot of gay people, even though, I mean, personally, I would kind of think that most people now aren't homophobic, but, you know, homophobes are quite loud.
I mean, I'm going to address the audience directly. I would imagine a lot of the... I don't know, this is probably quite condescending, actually. I was going to say a lot of the grown-ups, the adults, would possibly be less... I think kids can be quite cruel.
Yeah.
I think adults can be cruel, but tend to hold back a little bit more from actually being bullying about things. But if you're the kind of person...
When it does get to a level where they are bullying someone, it gets quite serious, where... You know, they might actually start getting really physical about it. Yeah, well, don't. Fuckers. That's when I will go macho. Kids can do that as well. Yeah. See, even that's a betrayal of society's view. I said, that's when I will get macho. Like, it's not macho. It's just being fucking respectful of other human beings. It's like, it's not feminine or masculine. It's just sticking up for people's right to be themselves. Yeah. You know, if you are going to take the piss out of somebody else or bully someone else because of who and what they are, you have a problem with your own identity, not them. Because definitely, if you've got to bring someone else down to feel confident about yourself, then you're already below them. Insert analogy about the majority feeling oppressed by someone just being represented. Yeah, I don't feel threatened by people's differences. That's how we get into the... This is a side note, but I will come to this in sexism. I just get pissed off at people that seem to just criticize media for having some diversity in it. It's like Marvel's, I think it's the weekend, they sort of sold the most over the weekend, Captain Marvel and Black Panther, which were hated on. Both of them were hated on heavily for their diversity because Captain Marvel has a female lead. Yeah. Which a lot of people are like, oh. But it's up to the reasonable people to kind of try to ignore all of that. You know, the majority their success at the box office kind of shows that the majority that aren't really too fussed about criticising everything.
But there's nothing to report on then.
Yeah.
And that's what the media thrives on, is opposing viewpoints. There's nothing... If everybody's agreed and everybody's
they score
peaceful...
quite high with the critics, but with
media
the
would die.
audiences, which I'm guessing most of the people that actually bother to review it are angry with people who aren't paid as critics.
Maybe that's why the media want to keep genders separate, because then there's a possibility of division and conflict. It's like if we're all the same, there's nothing to... There's no battle.
I know. I feel like... because sexism's still very real, and... I guess the thing would be that sexism's different from genderism, and that transphobia is a different thing as well.
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, just you saying that, it's like, well, if you got rid of the concept of gender from society, you couldn't actually have sexism.
Yeah.
Because all it would be based on would be physical shape, and it's like, well, you'd just as easily have fatism or thinism or tallism or shortism. You know, it's like...
Yeah, and people...
It's just a way to divide people.
Because that's not an issue in society, it's fine for us to make jokes about stuff being a bit of a midget.
Is it?
There's not systemic oppression of small people. Unless you're talking in the past with dwarves.
Yeah, you're saying that as a tall person.
Yeah.
You've not experienced...
Yeah, but there's not systemic oppression there. And there hasn't been.
Is there not? Ask a dwarf about that, maybe.
Yeah, I just said that.
Did you?
But that's a different issue as well.
You asked the gay dwarf that came on to me at Cheers in Aberdeen. Did you not know about this? Oh, I must have told you the story, yeah. Well, after one of our musicals, I think it was when we did Flashdance, the after-show party happened to migrate to the local gay bar, which was just up the road, which is kind of par for the course since most of them were.
I don't know, maybe alcohol sort of fiddles with the gaydar, and...
No, there's loads of straight people at gay clubs. In fact, there's a lot more straight women than there are men because they feel safe there. Which, men, take note.
Yeah, don't just tune out to that.
You're going to get a lot more women around you if you're gay. Just treat them with respect.
Don't pretend to be gay, though.
No, don't pretend to be gay. Just treat them with respect and kind of, you know. But yeah, I was.
That's just a general rule for life. Treat different people with respect, I guess. But
it's a theme, isn't it? I wonder if people will actually start doing that one day. People of different races, different nationalities.
Yeah, but
we'll all be one world, one human race.
Why do we say that you're British? Because I would say that we're both...
I'm fucking ashamed to say I am at the moment.
Yeah. I would happily abolish borders if there weren't any political turmoil to
I think I brought this up before, the Jim Morrison thing about...
Their imaginary lines.
Tying down nature and putting fences up.
It's just saying, I own this piece of rock because I was born here, but I own this whole piece of rock.
It's territory.
Reasons, because we have a bigger military than you.
But, I mean, it's sad that it's still in existence at this stage of our species evolution, if you like. But at some point in the past, it would have been a necessary part of...
All of it is just imaginary borders and tribalism, male and female, in terms of gender, nationalities, as you say, races. All of these are imaginary borders that don't really exist, and they're inconsequential. The hormones are slightly different, but that's a division within sex.
I'm going to go into some way out territory now, and via the idea of maybe the internet is a way of abolishing all of that eventually. It's very much in its early stages, and we only interface with it via screens and keyboards at the moment. But imagine if we could neurally interface with everyone else on the planet. We could actually experience what it'd be like from them from the inside. We'd understand.
I don't feel like I'd want that.
Why not?
I wouldn't want to sign up so that...
Everyone's fucked up.
No, because that's kind of like publicly broadcasting your thoughts. And there's some things that...
You could do it anonymously, though.
Could you? Because like, if they saw through your eyes and what you were actually thinking.
Well, all right, but let's just look at it in a metaphorical sense. Virtual reality. You get to project what personality you like. Everything's getting mixed up in a global environment, basically, is my point.
Yeah.
So things are becoming less and less. I mean, I've played World of Warcraft, haven't I? Listen, I've played World of Warcraft, and I've played a character that I've designed to be a gorgeous-looking female character that I feel attracted to, even though it's a CGI and it's like a blood
Nerd.
elf. But for me, that's not because I want to be portrayed as a woman. It's just because I'm going to be looking at this character all the time while I'm playing, so I want something nice to look at, and that's what attracts me. But anyone else in the game isn't going to know that when they come across my character. So, and nobody else in the game, I'm going to know what gender they are in real life.
It's a weird analogy, but I guess it kind of works.
But it doesn't matter. You can represent yourself how you like. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
it's less relevant. So,
but another way that sort of, I mean, you have to do it in a certain way because, I mean, something like Twitter, that's a shitstorm for divisions. Like, there's just everywhere, just people of different tribes sort of splitting into smaller sub-tribes and all just screaming.
We're an infantile race on the internet.
Yeah, but we've only had the World Wide Web for, I can't do math, but 24 years?
Was it 95?
Yeah, 24 years now.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we all this shit that goes on with social media and all this shit that goes on with referendums being interfered with and data exploitation and stuff. We've got no fucking idea what we're doing. It's a whole new world.
Yeah,
literally.
The digital age,
and it's accelerating. So, I mean, all of these differences, are they just not going to just reappear if we ever come across alien races? You know, if we start going out into space, we might just get united as a human race, and then suddenly it's.
Anyway, I'm going to stop on this sort of line because I know at some point we do have an episode on tribalism, and we'll have more to talk about then.
Oh, Klingons, excellent.
And I do want to show at least part of some of these videos from trans.
We'll cut this out of the podcast.
Yeah.
And the video thing, but if you want to have a look, the links will be in the description.
The channel is ContraPoints,
and we shall rejoin you when we have viewed.
That was longer than I expected, but there's a lot in there.
I got jaded. I really got jaded with I just felt like it was. I know what the points are that are being made, but it's just exhausting. The conflict that's being, it just seems like it's.
By the way, the video that we watched was aesthetics.
Yeah, it's just. I don't know. It just seems pointless to take either side, because, I mean, I can see why, if you're in certain situations, you would need to put your point across if you're being challenged from an unreasonable position. But the best way to defeat a bully is to ignore them.
Yeah, but that doesn't work, clearly, because bullies have votes, and it matters in the legal sense, and it matters to loads of black trans people that get murdered in America, and that the police have no way of finding because they are legally documented.
But they are victims of a polarised society that is being constantly pushed into polarised debate.
But debate's important, though.
It is important, but it's about coming together, not fighting. It's about accepting people's differences.
That's why they came in towards the end, because they were having a more civilized discussion, and then they realised that the rest of the world's having a much worse debate. And they're just discussing whether this person should be wearing high heels or a dress.
It it gets to a point with me where it's almost like philosophy disappearing up its own arse, because you kind of analyze.
Philosophy doesn't matter when you're being harassed.
No, but that whole argument went a lot further than that. It went into aesthetics and politics, and one thing that did occur to me, which I found quite amusing, and they're quite right. The world that we live in at the moment is more about aesthetics and show business and appearances, and that's what politics is nowadays. But in that
Instagram stories and the fact that Donald Trump is the president and he's...
Can I finish my point?
Yeah, okay.
In that society, is not showbiz the sensible one? Saying we're in Rome now, we're not in Athens. It's like, in that case, the world of politics is the showbiz part, the circus, if you like. Is it not at that point where the serious progress and the serious dialogue is happening in the showbiz world? Because we, as people in show business, we have nothing to be a circus for, because the circus is there, it's at the centre. So show business, which would normally be the circus in a philosophical society, is the serious bit. It's where the serious issues get discussed. It's where, when you go to the theatre, that's where progress is being made. That's where things like Hamilton are happening, and
only once in a blue moon.
That's happening all the time. You walk through the West End or Broadway and see the number of... And it's on the TV all the time, you see it.
Yeah, but only elitist snobs goes to see that.
But it's on the TV all the time. You get serious dramas on the TV all the time. That's theatre in your own living room. It's just a case of people accessing it.
Only emotional housewives watch that.
That's not true. I watch it.
It's
I'm not an emotional
but that's
housewife.
the society that is presented to us aesthetically.
That is a part of society.
It's bullshit.
I'm going to stand my ground here because I am a part of society.
Yeah.
I don't care whether I'm representative of the whole, but I have a valid position in that society, and there are many people who take exactly the same view and more reasonable views than mine who have just as much right to a voice as the arseholes on the right.
But just saying, well, just ignore the arseholes isn't helpful to the people that are being murdered, or the legislation and the votes that are being made that don't really help anyone.
You don't have to fight someone to resist them, though. That's my point.
But ignoring them just means that they just go, oh yeah, my opinion must be right because you just didn't respond.
Oh, right, I see. Well, we've maybe just got a semantics thing going on then, because when I say ignore, I don't mean, like, allow them to continue doing what they're doing. I mean...
But how do you challenge someone then?
Well, it depends where you are in society. I mean, if you're a politician, you have tools at your disposal which we, in our position in society, don't have. But this is where I come back to the stand that I have made subliminally, shall we say, or diplomatically, against somebody who I've seen bullying or apparently getting towards the bullying of a homosexual. And I've just made it clear, but not confrontational, that... And to be honest, the way that I did it was by completely ignoring the things that he was saying. And everybody else in that group completely ignored him. But he was an individual. If there were more people in that group that were doing it and were encouraging each other, that might be different. But there were a few of us, and only one person was taking the piss out of the homosexual, and everybody was just blanking him whenever he spoke in that way.
There is a point
and he stopped doing
it. Crowd mentality does play into this a lot. The sort of mob. Yeah. Just sticking together with people because you're scared of being alone.
Yeah. And that I think is where it does become more difficult, taking a stand when you're on your own.
Yeah, because most people don't actively take part in that, I don't think. They're just bystanders and they validate it that way. Because they don't have the courage to do that.
Well, I mean, I'm lucky enough to be, in most situations, never in that kind of situation.
Yeah. Well,
but, I mean, part of
musicians have to be pretty confident anyway to do what they do.
They have to appear that way.
No, let's come back to the aesthetic there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the lines that I did completely agree with, and this is a famous concept in show business of any kind, is the fake it till you make it thing. That is a technique. You know, you pretend that you're good at something until you're not pretending anymore.
I did see you sort of getting angry, a little bit angry at some of the things being said during that.
By the one on the right.
Yeah.
Because it was perpetualizing.
I think the way that this channel works, it sort of presents their inner dialogue.
Yeah.
Was
it the same person on both sides?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It must take ages to film.
Yeah.
They do like a video a month.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, I think that's probably... I mean, it's a good representation, then, maybe, of that polarisation that's going on in society.
But it's also, like, the like I said, it's the inner dialogue. Because them, as a trans person, is having this sort of debate between, well, is the reality that I just have to accept that I just have to look more like a woman than women do? Which is ridiculous and absurd, as the one on the left points out.
Yeah.
But is it reality? Reality seems right now to be ridiculous and absurd.
What? Yeah, but this is where it does. This is not where I did say, you know, I switched off a while ago. But the point at which I kind of drifted out of it a little bit was when it became obvious that it literally had ascended, maybe, whatever you want to call it, but it had turned into philosophy. Because there is a point at which anyone who is... I mean, I know people that would, faced with the viewpoint of the person on the right in that video, would just say, yeah, whatever, darling, just get on with it. If that's what you think, fine. And they would have no power to argue against, because you're not engaging their argument. Do you know what I mean? But to me, in that particular example,
on the right is someone struggling with the reality that, especially in the public eye,
the person on the left seemed a lot more sorted. They seemed more centered.
They did, but you know, they said about if you cry yourself to sleep at night, but your Instagram story is fine, the world doesn't know.
Yeah,
they might not be happier, but you know, the person on the left was a lot more angry.
That's a much wider issue, though. That's not just about gender. That's everything, really. I mean, I think everybody puts forward. I mean, the other thing that you kind of... I mean, I suppose, again, this is something that you learn from being a performer or a musician, especially in my case, as I know, is that whenever you see someone else's performance, you're comparing what you know of yourself, your actual self, with their best. Because people project their best. If I put a recording out or a video out, we're going to edit this. Yeah. You know, we'll take the crap bits out. So when people listen to this, they will hear our best performance.
Well, we'll take the silence out.
Well, there hasn't been an awful lot of that, but
nah.
It's getting easier to edit as we go along. So we are getting better at it. We're faking it till we make it.
Yeah.
But the point is, anyone who's starting to make podcasts now might listen to us or other people doing podcasts who've been doing it for a while and compare their own performance to that. But they don't see their own performance in the final presented edited format. They see their own performance, warts and all.
Yeah, which I think you've struggled with in the past.
Yeah, I go and play trumpet with people in Aberdeen who I think are really good, but I only ever see them on their performance day.
I meant with us recording podcasts being like, oh, it's shit, and then you see the edit and just like, oh, it's actually pretty good.
Yeah, with a bit of gap in between, you sort of listen back and think it's not that bad. But you're continually comparing your worst day with everyone else's best, and I think that's something that, again, the age of the internet is going to teach people gradually to learn how to cope with, because
the idea of being presented there is that they kind of have to go over the top for that change in mass, for people to sort of see that that's who they are now. They need to go over the top.
Yeah, I can understand why it feels that way, but in actual fact,
sort of
to
stops
me,
people
that's
into
actually equally as damaging because it's equally as dishonest about who
Yeah.
they really are.
And that's the point that the person on the left was making.
Yeah.
So there's a sort of balance to make between how much of a show you put on, and you do have to put on a little bit of show because everyone does.
See, to me, that particular video, I'm not sure what the balance would be, but the person on the right was unreasonably on the right. The person on the left was what I'd think of as fairly well centred, but I don't know what the opposite would be, the unreasonably left, if you like.
The person on the left was what most people would see as unreasonably left. The person on the right was just, I would say, actually centre left.
Yeah, well, I obviously don't mix with a representative cross-section of society, but...
Can I just weigh in
Okay.
as a female who has expectations?
Are you sure
society?
that's what you are?
It's debatable, but apparently, yeah, that's what the doctor told me.
That's what you present as.
Well, I'm not even sure about that, to be honest. This is what I mean.
Generally, people assume.
In terms of society, a lot of women say how much pressure they feel that, when they go out, they've got to look good, they've got to be wearing nice clothes, they've got to have their hair done, their makeup done, which is why I don't particularly identify as being very feminine, because I just do not wear makeup unless I can't find lip balm and I've got lipstick to hand. That's about it. And I don't wear fancy clothes, and I put on clothes that I like, but they're what I like.
So maybe.
So in that sense, I don't conform to that, but I know that is how women feel.
That pressure is there.
So
for
in
women
some
as well
ways,
as for
the fact that a
men.
trans woman is getting that same pressure is, in a way, welcome to being a woman.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I've never been a man, obviously, so I don't know if men have that pressure on them, and it might be a different kind of pressure.
Yeah,
that
it is. Yeah.
you have to present something. You have to look like something. I mean, I've had people.
It's more behavioural, I think.
I've had people. My mum, amusingly, once when I was very young, fairly young, she never said it again. Asked me why I wasn't wearing mascara, and I was like, I'm going to Tesco. Oh, but binge out your eyes. Like,
but I mean, maybe that's why I
fish.
do feel most comfortable in the musical theatre world and in the musicians world, because there are so many feminine males there. I don't feel like pressure to be macho.
Yeah.
To take on a traditionally masculine role, because I can be a bloke and still be feminine and emotional and.
But you do have to be aware also that the reason that you got into money. I mean, I know you're
money.
Music.
When did you get into money? Tell me about this.
I know you're not that well off. I think I got mixed up with my ideas. That in some part because of your privilege, and I know a lot of people just tune out when they hit privilege, and it's like, no, I'm being criticised for something that's out with my control. That you have to be aware that most people don't have the opportunity to get into the musical world.
Yeah. Having said that,
they might have
opportunity,
but
you say that, but remember, I was at the time when I was getting into all of that, I was from a single parent family, and had to have government funding to get the school place that I got, and all the.
Do you think
all the government provided music facilities that I went through were provided for free, and that's all being taken away now?
Yeah,
and there's a massive uprising against it.
Do you think?
I mean, we have to pay music lessons for you. We never had to do that for me when I was at school.
Yeah. Do you think that you would have gotten to the heights you are if your mother wasn't musical herself?
That's kind of it's a difficult question because it's all interlinked. One of the main reasons I've addressed this in my Better Call Paul first or second episode. I'm not sure which, but I think it was second episode, which will be out
at some point.
It will be out already by the time you hear this. A major part of it is I know some people are naturally more musical. But a lot of it is to do with your surroundings and your environment as a child. Because she was musical, I spent a lot of time hanging around in places where there were lots of other people who were performers or musicians or actors. A I was surrounded by people like that because of her musical background.
Yeah.
And that shaped who I am.
In a similar way, even though we're not very well off, that's probably the same for me.
So the privilege wasn't financial, it was
there's
about where I was.
Privilege to do with how your social standing sort of fit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I guess people's professions are often very much influenced by their families, is what I'm saying. So, for working class feminine man, let's say, whose dad was a truck driver.
Yeah, I can imagine there being some very difficult situations to...
Their own dad might not accept them.
Yeah.
Never mind the people in the industries that they're probably going to end up in, which are more handsy.
So that, I mean, in a way, that puts you in a privileged situation. That you know very well that whoever you are and whatever you choose to do or be, you'll be accepted by your family.
Yeah.
And I would take that right
which should be the default, but unfortunately it's not.
I would probably take that further than a lot of parents would, in that if you ended up being a murderer, I would still accept you as my son. I wouldn't condone what you'd done, but I would still come and support you in prison. I would do everything I could as a father for you still. But that's not because I would agree with what you'd done. It's just that you are you, and I accept whatever that may be. And a lot of people,
murderer, by the way,
but a lot of people aren't in that position. And again, that probably stems from, and this is probably a viral thing, that this is probably the crux of what I mean about being accepting of other people and being less confrontational with people, is that it spreads, because I'm only as accepting of everyone around me because I have been accepted by so many people for who and what I am. And which is probably why I feel less need to define it, because I don't have any...
So would you say that people who are rejected feel more compelled to reject others?
That one took me by surprise, because I thought you were going to say something else which I would have agreed with, which was people who are rejected may feel more likely to rebel against whatever it is that's rejecting them. And in some ways that's reflective maybe of the overcompensation of, you saying about in that video about them having to be even more feminine to kind of be accepted.
Yeah.
But what was it you said? People who are rejected
feel more compelled to reject others.
Well, I wonder whether or not that might be. I mean, would it? If the person on the left was rejected,
for example, I mean, you name this person, that person who ended up becoming a fundamentalist Christian.
Yes,
possibly because, I don't know, maybe they felt rejected by their own family because their family wouldn't accept them as being
absolutely
gay.
not. Because actually, his father apologized to me for the things that he'd said on Facebook and said we're not all like that. And I was talking about, and I don't, there's no way this person could be identified. This person was actually the son of a religious leader in an organization that I was involved with, and he was like the equivalent of a vicar, if you like, and it was his son. That had nothing to do with, as far as I know, nothing to do with religious organisation. It was the vicar kind of person that apologised to me and said, look, we're not all like that. The religious person that said that. But I do know one thing about it, and this is perhaps worth recognising, is that the son, who I was shocked to hear the views of, had spent quite a few years in America, was living in America, had moved there. I think somewhere in the, maybe not the deep south, but certainly the south kind of half of the country.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure that won't have...
Trump country.
I'm sure that won't have had, an insignificant effect on them. So, but I mean, it's digressing a little bit, but this did the thing about the surroundings, the difficult surroundings and stuff. It is... And I noticed earlier on they were talking about the knife crime epidemic, and they're throwing like £100 million at the police force or something. It's not about specific things that can be done to combat something. It's about the things that cause them in the first place. It's poverty that brings about things like knife crime and the suffering of it's. I know I'm talking about knife crime, but this is as much about people that are in situations where it's normal for people to be shitty to each other in a society. You know, ideally, if society was well balanced and reasonable, everyone would be nice to each other. But we live in a society where everyone is encouraged, whether it be by politicians or the media, because there's that whole divide and conquer thing that goes on, that it's in their best interests to polarize people and set people against each other, because then they're weaker as a proletariat.
We live in a clickbait society where the most clicks are by the flame wars.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this person said this on Twitter.
I just misread a thumbnail on YouTube on the screen in front of me. It says how to recognise a fascist. Because it's quite a small thumbnail, I thought it said how to become a fascist. But yeah, anyway. This has been really quite vociferous. I'm using lots of long words.
What does that mean?
Don't know. I don't even know if I used that word rightly.
For fuck's sake. Don't use words unless you know what they mean. Because that means that...
Outspokenly expressing or characterised by vehement opinions, loud and forceful. Yeah, I knew what I meant. I know what words mean. I just sometimes don't know.
Yeah, that's just sort of out of context. You can't really describe it.
Sorry, I've done way too much talking. I feel like I've done most of the talking today, and you just had to kind of tolerate me ranting.
That's fine.
You say something now. No pressure.
Right. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people, because I'm aware there's still just a lot of people that aren't really asshole. Well, they're kind of asshole, but not like massive assholes. They're not trying to be mean or anything. And I don't know if your understanding of how trans people feel has improved throughout this podcast, seeing the perspective of ContraPoints, and also my sort of comment on that, and
I would say it's,
and also just sort of hearing out loud what you think.
I would say because I have known trans people. I'm sure I've known a lot more trans people than I know I've known.
You still know trans people?
Yeah. But I would say I can count probably the people who I know. The people who I know are trans or have been trans or whatever. I can count on the fingers of one hand, but I'm pretty sure I probably know a lot more than that. I would say what it probably has done is open my eyes a little bit, because I've never really thought about how it feels for them, because I've never been against them.
Yeah.
It's not been a something I've considered, because I haven't seen them as anything to point a finger at or criticise.
Yeah.
But I haven't... When you say about... And I do know there's a lot of people out there that do criticise that, and I haven't really thought actively about how that must feel for them. And it must be...
Yeah.
Must be a nightmare.
Yeah. Just sort of imagine someone going, oh, well, you're not a real man. I mean, I think you might think that's a bit of a compliment, but...
I'd laugh, I think, if anyone said that to me.
But because they're being...
I would actually say, what the fuck is that? It's like... What do you mean?
But you're confident.
Do you know what you mean?
Because you've lived your whole life as a man. Well, at least a male.
I've got a dick, if that's what you mean, but...
Yeah, but you've lived your whole life with society expecting you to be male, and you've sort of acted vaguely male, even if it's a bit...
I've had people accuse me of... I use the word accuse, I don't mean accuse, but I've had people... what do you call it? Theorise that I'm bisexual to my face. simply because of the thoughts that I've come out with or the things that I've said. And I'm like, my response to it is, well, does it matter what I am? It's like, I don't choose to label myself as anything. It's just, if I woke up tomorrow, apart from the fact that I'm married, but if I woke up like next week or whatever and found that I really fancied a bloke, then I wouldn't let the fact that society expects me to be straight stop me from feeling that. Because I'm married, I wouldn't do anything about it, but I certainly wouldn't feel bad about having those feelings.
But again, sexuality does play less of a role than gender.
Yeah.
I mean, I get pissed off at people like going up to like 3-year-olds and saying, "Oh, have you got a girlfriend yet?" It's just like, fuck off. No, they don't. Of course.
I would say actually in society, it's probably more likely that there are more. I think males are probably more likely to have inherently gay traits in terms of sexuality than women. And let me explain why. Is that it's not necessarily right, or that generally society tends to accept that men tend to masturbate more than women. I know that is a generalization, and there are, but I mean, talking statistically, it's
statistically
expected that they do.
Yeah, but there's all sorts of societal factors where women are sort of meant to feel ashamed of that as well.
But how many of those men, when they're actually doing that, are feeling ashamed or dirty about it, like they're doing something that they shouldn't be, because they're actually
Catholics.
Well, yeah, but they're giving sexual stimulation to a male body when they do that. And if you're really going to enjoy that to its fullest extent, then you've got to accept that you might not want to do it to somebody else, but you're still having it away with a penis. It's like. Whether it's yours.
The straight mindset is like, I like my penis, but the rest can fuck off. That's sort of the idea.
It's still a penis, just because it's yours doesn't make any difference.
Well, it does to how you feel about it. It's been attached to you all
actually,
your life.
this brings up one, and this may out me as a complete and utter fucking weirdo, but I have...
I think you've already been...
I don't know whether or not anyone else has thought these things, but I find it an interesting concept. Partly, I mean, it's almost a mental exercise in what if. But I know quite often with identical twins, there's like a mental connection between them. If I had an identical male twin, or probably a more accurate example of this would be if you could duplicate yourself, if you could clone yourself, or if you could get a time machine and travel back and meet yourself, would you have sex with yourself? If you could. And how many people would see that as being gay? Because I would feel a lot more comfortable about... I'll be honest, I would feel
that would be incest.
Well, you're talking about yourself, though, not like a twin. That's why I've kind of dropped the analogy of the twin. But if you could clone yourself...
Yeah, but you're related to yourself, kind of. You have exactly the same genetics.
All right, but incest's a social construct as well. What I'm trying to say is, would you feel...
Heavily related to genetics.
You're avoiding answering the question.
No, I don't think so.
Even
Apart
if you knew that
I don't think I'm ready for sex.
Even if you knew that person had exactly the same mindset as you and thought exactly the same way as you.
Definitely not a past self.
Right.
That's a weird one.
Mind you, it is a weird one because I'm trying to put myself in that position now. I assume that I wouldn't have any problem with it, but then when you actually think about it, if you're actually looking at yourself,
there'd
be a lot more going on in your mind than whether or not you want it. You'd just be very confused, wouldn't you, really?
I sometimes have that with sexual fantasies where they're ruined by the fact that I'm in them.
And imagine coming face to face with yourself would be a bit of a realization as well, because I don't think many people ever realise
You'd see your own cum face.
what they're really like.
You'd see your own cum face.
You might have to shut your eyes. But no, apart from that, I mean, just having a conversation with yourself, you'd find out what you're like to have a conversation with, which would be a fucking nightmare, I think. Because it's the similarities about being with somebody that really annoy you. Your similarities with them are the things that really irritate you normally.
I guess, yeah. That's a bit weird. I feel like coming at it from would you fuck them is a different thing to having a conversation with them.
Yeah, I suppose it would be very uncomfortable, wouldn't it? I suppose you would. I mean, I suppose in some ways it would be a lot more intense than a family member because, you know, they're a lot closer genetically to you even than. How did we get onto this? This is uncomfortable territory.
Yeah, I don't feel like this is really to do with gender.
But the relationship
I guess
about it was
sexuality,
sexuality
and masturbation, but I don't know. But in terms of I was making a point, and then we went off on a tangent as we normally do.
Well, we haven't done much of that. We've been going for like an hour and 3/4.
I'm happy to. This is quite an important topic.
Yeah. Well,
okay, yeah. The point is, a lot of people go, "Oh, there's only two genders because of biology." In which case, I would say, listen to the rest of this discussion, and that biology is different to the psychology, and the psychology kind of links to the genetics. So, I mean, there's not really been enough research done to determine how much of it is environmental factors, how much of it is genetic factors. It's probably a mix of both.
If you think
so, either way, it's kind of still biology, even though it relates to.
If you think gender's just about what shape your body is, then look back a couple of 100 years and see the ridiculous clothes and hairstyles that blokes were sporting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's revealing, isn't it, that I say ridiculous? Because they weren't ridiculous then, any more than some of the hairdos and makeup that women traditionally wear now are ridiculous. It's just what society expected at the time. If you were in a particular level of society, I'm sure there weren't people on Dickensian London streets sporting fancy wigs and tunics. But
I think we've shown that separate from the non-binary, basically, can be it's real, basically.
Yeah.
And that's valid, and it's not just people pretending that they're not part of something.
This is another thing that I never really consider is the viewpoints of people who actually deny the existence of things that are real.
Yeah, there's plenty of people that deny the existence of gay people, or that
which is
think
strange
the Holocaust didn't happen.
A lot of the time, these people are coming from the viewpoint of somebody who believes things are real that aren't.
Yeah, you have to realise that, like that person, Contrapoints, was saying about politics being about aesthetics, is that what people see heavily influences them, and how they see it heavily influences them.
Yeah. Mm.
And that basically means that the person with the right aesthetics can run the world.
I wonder whether or not your understanding of this whole situation is and people of your generation's understanding is so much more comprehensive than mine because of your knowledge of politics.
That might be more of a thing about my autism. I don't know. It's kind of hard to think why I'm like I am, but I'm just weird, and I like to think about how other people are thinking, because
you're not weird, you're you.
Yeah, but that's weird. And I love that I'm weird.
Well, if you're weird, everyone's weird. Weird is out of the ordinary, but there is no ordinary.
There is. People can pretend to be ordinary. I present as weird, I guess.
Ordinary is a
people would call me weird.
A concept.
Weird.
a concept, and it's this whole kind of society defining things thing. It's like there's a what's normal. It's like there isn't any normal. Fuck what people say should be. It's
there's people sort of acting under the vague umbrella of normal and pretending to sort of be.
But this is what creates twisted minds, because people are trying to conform and trying to be things that they're not.
That's
and
what
it
the whole
fucks
world
with people's
is.
minds, you
That's
know?
pretty much what the whole world is doing every day.
Yeah, and well, when it goes to an extreme, it fucks with people's minds, you know? Most people survive it, but why should we have to?
Most people don't deviate from the normal enough to really have to care that much.
But everyone is different, even within normal. What you refer to as normal,
There are different but degrees there's acceptable difference. Like, I don't know.
And now we're starting to get into philosophy, because it's like, so, well, what's a normal amount of acceptance of normal?
Yeah, it's all sort of imaginary borders of shit, and society is a weird and complex thing. We can't just sum it up in one discussion. That's why we're doing a podcast.
It'd be, actually, if we could, it would be a bit of an end to Breaking Bollocks, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Unless
we actually turned up at the next episode with a bowl full of bollocks and nutcracker.
That's what our 100th episode is going to be.
No, it's not.
I'm joking. At least I hope so.
I'll come with the nutcracker, but maybe we should call it a day.
Okay,
or at least sum up.
Yeah, basically, there'll be a lot of people that just sort of maybe just turned off at some point long ago, but if you're still listening,
well done.
Listen to people that have different experiences to you, because I'm trying to listen to you in order to sort of figure out how the world works. And
you're trying to listen to...
I'm trying to listen to people that have different viewpoints to me.
Yeah.
As much as possible, where it's not self-destructive.
Yeah. I think a key to that might be just to recognise that listening to somebody doesn't necessitate agreeing with them. But if you just listen, then at least you stand a chance of understanding.
Take in what other people are saying and try and see it from their point of view, what they go through every day.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you...
But you get a lot of criticism for that, don't you? I mean, like, I
do you?
I try... When people are like violent criminals and things like that, when people are like basically condemned by society and the press kind of, crucify people basically, I try to, even though I agree that they've done some really horrible things, I try to think about what has driven them to do that, what they must have been through to, and it's no help to the victims. And I don't deny that the victims need as much help, but in some ways the perpetrators are just as much victims, because
I get that
they can't escape themselves,
a way. There obviously has to be some sort of justice there.
Definitely, yeah. But I don't think it's the way that we've got it's all about punishment, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not... Our justice system doesn't accurately reflect what actual justice is.
No, but it
doesn't actually solve the problem.
Does it reflect what society deems to be a just way of treating people who are different?
Probably what most people.
Or is it the other way around? Do people treat others who are different to them in the way they do because the justice system tells them that's the right way to treat people who don't conform?
On that topic, just briefly, we've talked about a lot of things that aren't really to do with gender, but kind of link into general societal divisions and how they're kind of bullshit and imaginary. But this isn't really even to do that. On this topic of just thinking from someone else's perspective, I quite like John Ronson. I saw a TED Talk. Everything is like from a TED Talk. Yeah. Do you remember a tweet? I can't remember her name. From someone, they tweeted, "Going to Africa, I hope I don't get AIDS. Just kidding that I'm white."
And then got on a plane.
Got on I think it was a 13-hour flight, woke up and their life was ruined.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, but basically if you search her name, and she's had massive problems actually trying to get a job, because if someone searches her name, like the top first 13 pages are that story.
Mm.
And like there's a couple of things about a blog that she's trying to start up to try and get rid of that, but it's really not working.
Mm.
And what that was a joke in poor taste.
Yeah.
A bad joke, basically.
Yeah, but certainly not worthy of ruining someone's life.
And it was meant to be sort of ironic. At least this was their
kind of taking the piss out of people who would say that sort of thing seriously.
Yeah, but sort of ironic about how our society doesn't actually really care about the people getting AIDS unless they're white.
Yeah. No, they care more about destroying one person.
Yeah. They'll destroy the person pointing out the issue rather than actually tackling
the problem is, you're not talking about one person, you're talking about society.
Yeah. The internet and society kind of weird and annoying, but anyway, that kind of just sort of links into seeing something from someone else's viewpoint, which I'm trying to do with other people as much as possible, but to a certain point, it's
some people are just fucking idiots.
Yeah, there's a certain point. Oh my god, this is even more off topic. That flat Earth documentary. Oh my god.
Let's quit while we're ahead.
Okay, well, our next episode is science, so we can talk about that then.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah. Next time. No, it's not next week.
Next time on Breaking Bollocks. I'd just like to make reference to something I said at the beginning of the episode. How are we going to talk about gender for an hour or more?
We could talk about this for a day. Anyway, let's not, because Twitch doesn't allow that upload size.
Although I do know some people will be listening to this on speed and a half.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Anyway, let's wrap up there because we've talked for long enough and I need to sleep.
Me too. If you've been affected by anything in this episode and don't have a support system in place, give us a shout. No, seriously, get in touch,
Get in touch for sure.
We don't have that many followers to be flooded with stuff we can't deal with, so if you want to...
And I adopt random people all the time.
An understanding shoulder to cry on. Even though you may never have met us, we don't know who you are, just give us a shout and we'll try and give you some moral support, such as it is.
Yeah. Anyway. Is that
we're all out here and we care.
Yeah, we care about other people's perspectives.
If you're an intolerant bastard, though, fuck off.
I know this would have been like ages ago. I don't know. We're having some guests onto a podcast that aren't paid now.
Are we?
Well, didn't you say that you got someone for...
I've asked, but I haven't had any... I haven't asked directly, but yeah.
We're trying to get people with
It has been mentioned on the After Dark Network that we're looking for people to take part in the Bollocks Report.
We're trying to get people with different opinions to come on, so that it's not just us. We occasionally have a discussion like this where we are actually quite opinionated, but we have a reasonable discussion about it and we actually come to something.
I think from the vibe that I've got, it's probably better for me to actually ask sort of the day before or on the day itself, is anyone available at like this time? So
right. Okay.
So we might have someone on, we might not. But I thought with Breaking Bollocks, it's probably best to keep it more kind of, either just us two and star stuff, or we can have Pate on because we enjoyed that. We might, if we've got a special subject that we want more people on, we might invite them on in the future. But this one's more of a personal sort of intimate chat, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we don't want all the riff-raff involved. Ruining our style, such as it is.
Okay. Whatever you say.
That's the way.
Before we do actually hit the 2-hour mark, I'm going to try and wrap this up as quick as possible.
Do it.
I'm Fireball.
Up in the orbiter.
This has been Breaking Bollocks.
Good night.
Episode 31.
2.
Episode 32. Gender. Bye. Dear listeners. Do you just kiss your microphone?
No, I kissed the listeners. What?
Touch them deep inside.
You didn't have to go there.
You didn't. I'm sorry.
Something inside so strong.
I've scarred you listeners, but it was his fault.
Can we stop now, please? I feel like we're milking the outro a bit.
Okay, bye.
This podcast is part of the After Dark Podcast Network.